Bolton, and I'm going to be chairing today's meeting. For those of you that are on it earlier, I have had a clash that's been put in, so I am going to have to drop off and rejoin later on. So hopefully I'll be able to hand over to our speaker and join before the end of that, rejoin before the end of that session. If that's the plan. So I'd just like to thank everyone for joining today. We have our session on the Health and Wellbeing Network. We're then going to go into some breakout rooms to give people the opportunity to discuss the content of that session, some of the issues that they're facing, and then have the opportunity to feedback. I'm then going to do a quick update from the GM network, and there's a few other updates around the wider Value Maker network that we want to give at the end of the session. And following that, there'll be an opportunity for any other business if anyone's got anything they would like to raise or comment on. As always, if there's any questions, please raise your hands. We want these to be interactive meetings going forward. Just from the housekeeping side, if you can stay on mute unless you're speaking, and if possible, to have your cameras on, but obviously if that's not possible, that's fine. And there is the chat function as well if you'd like to ask a question or do anything within the chat. So I think I've seen Lynn join. Yes, I can see Lynn on my screen now. So I will pass over to Lynn for the Health and Wellbeing Network section.
Hi all, thank you very much for inviting me today. First of all, I'm going to start by apologising because unfortunately I am not 100% at the moment, so bear with me. I've picked up one of these dreaded bugs that is going around and I've had a pretty rough couple of days, so bear with me if I'm not firing on all cylinders today. I've got a bit of a short presentation where I was going to talk about looking after yourselves at the moment, because I appreciate that NHS finance is an extremely challenging place to be, with all the pressures and challenges that are going on. And then to talk a little bit about the Health and Wellbeing Network that I'm hoping to set up within the Northwest as well. And your thoughts and inputs into that would be really helpful for me. So I'll share my screen. What I will say is once I've shared my screen, I can't necessarily see if people are putting their hands up. So I'm more than happy if people just want to shout, interrupt me, however, is easiest. So give me 1 minute. Right, I'm hoping you can see my screen. If somebody could give me a thumbs up or just let me know that that's okay. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So I wanted to talk a little bit. Sorry, my machine has decided to run at 1 mile an hour now, which is not really very helpful. Right, hopefully you're getting the presentation now. So a little bit about me before we jump into this. I'm Deputy Finance Director at Midlands and Lancashire CSU. We've just regained our level 3 reaccreditation, and I've been a health and wellbeing champion now for about 5 years, and I sit on the national steering group regarding health and wellbeing at One NHS Finance too. What's probably more important is why I'm a health and wellbeing champion, because ultimately I want to make a difference. I want to help others be positive and be the best versions of themselves. And I think we've got a great network of people in finance. And I think supporting that not only physical but emotional well-being is critical for all of us. So before I move into the presentation itself, I'd like to ask you guys a question. And if you could just respond in the chat. What signs do you see or do you hear or feel when you feel your personal resilience is low? So if you feel your, pressure, anxiety, whatever, how does it manifest itself? And if you could just pop what it feels like to you in the chat, that would be great. Yeah, so lots of comments about tired, overwhelmed, procrastination, new lack of patience. Really interesting. A lump in my throat, heaviness in my chest. It can feel physical sometimes. It stress, tension, things like that. It's very weird because it can feel physical as well as mental for you as well. Yeah, Suzanne, I recognise the comment you've just put, jumping from one thing to another, not getting anything finished. That's me when I'm feeling like that. So, yeah, all of those things are really important. And I think recognizing those symbols, signs in yourself is critical because the sooner you recognize them, the sooner you can do things to address them. So, what the next question I'd like to ask you guys is what boundaries have you learned to help you cope when you feel those things happening to you? So, for me, as an example, I'm a morning person. I tend to get up and I'm like, whoa, hello, I'm here. I'm not oh gosh, I need 3 coffees. But for me, working late in the evening does not work for me because I cannot switch off before I then go to bed. Then I don't sleep well and it becomes a cycle then. So I've learned that I am better to work earlier in the day, try and finish at a set time. I've also learned within my organisation, we work from home quite a lot. I've learned to leave my things in a set room and be able to close the door at the end of the evening is critical. So that includes my laptop, my work mobile, unless I'm on call or something like that. I leave it all in a room and I shut the door. And there's something mentally about shutting that door at the end of the day is me walking away from work. So what if I could ask you again just to pop in the chat, what have you learned? What boundaries have you found you've had to put into place to protect your well-being? Or what else have you learned to cope if you sometimes feeling those feelings of anxious or stressed or however we want to call it? What have you learned to cope with those? Yeah, taking a deep breath, step back. Yeah, get outside, get some fresh air is a great one. I will at times, and I encourage my team to do this. And I know I can see Taylor's on this call, so she will warrant this that we will just say, right, I'm off for a walk in the middle of the day, because sometimes 10 minutes away from your desk can be so much better. Protect some lunchtime, yeah, exercise. All these are brilliant things. And one size won't fit all is the other thing I would say. So be prepared that you being the best version of yourself, you need to work out what works for you as well. So moving on to the next slide then. Okay, I do genuinely mean this. You must learn to apply your oxygen mask first. So, when you're on the aeroplane and the air hostess is there and she's going, exits are here, and here. And they tell you when that oxygen mask drops down that you should put your own on first before you help anybody else. The reason is if you're not breathing, you can't help anybody else. And the same applies to looking after yourself and self-care. Unless you are kind to yourself and you look after yourself, you can't help and care for other people as well. You know, I think of it like a battery. If your battery's depleted, your ability to offer support to others isn't there at the moment. So I wanted to talk a little bit about something I've called bounce back ability. This is based from a guy called Paul McGee, so I'm not taking any credit for this. He's called the Sumo Guy. If you Google him, he's got a website, he's got videos on YouTube, etc. But he's got some great tips about how to look after yourself, and but also how to, if you've had a knockback, or if you've had, you know, if it's feeling difficult, how do you bounce back from that? And the first one of those is, it is okay not to be okay sometimes. You know, I'm not going to sit here and be one of those people who say to you, you have to be positive all the time. You know, it's just not realistic. You know, it is okay to be frustrated, angry, upset. But remember, it isn't permanent. So by that, I mean, it's a state you're going through in reaction to what's going on around you at that moment in time. It is okay to sit on the sofa and have a little wallow and eat some ice cream. But it's part of your journey. It is not your end destination. Sitting on the sofa and being miserable all the time is nobody's end destination. It is part, you know, it's okay not to be okay, but remember, it isn't permanent. Okay, so the second thing is about trying to think about failure positively, which may sound really, really weird, but this was a great tip I picked up. Failure is an event, it isn't you as an individual. So just because you fail at something, it's an event. It doesn't define you as a person. It's temporary, it's not permanent. Again, try and hang on to that thought of, this is a point in my life that it's failed. I failed at that. It's not the end of the world, doesn't define me. And in 6 months' time, I'll have done loads of amazing other stuff. Try and remember, it's not personal. So failure isn't personal. How many times, and I know I've been here and done this, do you think, oh, why do all bad things happen to me? And oh, woe is me, etc. Failure isn't personal. We all have failures in our life. Even the most impressive people out there, whoever they may be to you, will have been through failure at some point in their life. So remember, it's not permanent, it's not personal, and it's not contagious. So by that, I mean, it is, you know, just because one thing goes wrong in your life, it's not a disease that's going to spread through your whole life. You might have something really difficult happening outside of work, but at the same time, you could be gaining new opportunities, etc., at work as well. So try and remember that failure is not contagious. Also, try and keep perspective on failure. And this is a great tip that I picked up from Paul McGee, where on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is sheer and certain death, how important will this issue be in 6 months' time? I will guarantee you that most of the things you're dealing with in life, not all, but most of the things you're dealing with would probably score below a 3. If you're saying that 10 is sheer and certain death, then a lot of things that at the time feel overwhelming can be much, putting them in perspective helps you manage those feelings around them. And then finally, go for quick wins. So by that, I mean, if you've had a failure, nothing motivates like success. So try and do some small things that are quick wins for you to help you gain momentum to move forward again. because that having a success, even if it's small, gives you a positive feeling and allows you to start to move forward again and build momentum and move forward. So I'm just going to stop the slideshow there and stop sharing my screen. I'm more than happy to take questions, talk about, talk through any of the points I've raised. No questions? Wow, you're a quiet bunch. It's quite scary. So finally, I wanted, why?
Hi, Ellen.
Hello.
Hi, yeah, it's really nice presentation. Really like it.
Thank you.
I recently read something really, really interesting out of LinkedIn, and I will find it and I'll try to forward it to you as part of the well-being and stuff. What happened is that I've read about this perspective about toxic positivity.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody heard about that.
Yeah.
It's almost saying that to kind of protect everybody well-being is not just is toxic positivity is not something that is bad, but they say that people have to be mindful of is that what they're saying is to protect everybody well-being because everybody's situation is so different. Is point of like if somebody's in a very difficult situation and the workplace or the environment that you're in is too positive, like, oh, you can do this, we can get through this, and every day was bang on to your head, that actually in research people said have more impact on the people that is actually not in that mindset at that moment, and kind of put even more pressure to them without realizing that this is the kind of pressure that was generated by the work positivity. I'm not saying work positivity is not good, but you know what? I'm a very positive person. I'm one of the culprit. Like, let's do this. Anyone who know me probably know that. But I think it's a very interesting topic that we should really explore, because I think before I read that piece of document, I say like, oh my God, I didn't never realize that. Oh my God, that's gonna happen. Do you know what I mean? And it was based on the study and stuff. Once I find it, I'm happy to share. But that's something really new at the moment on the scene.
Appreciate you sharing it. I have heard of it, and I
Yeah.
do agree. And I think there is that balance of sensitivity. So, as I said earlier, my view is it is okay not to be okay. And I think particularly if you're in a leadership role, it's really important, or I believe it's very important anyway, that you have personal integrity. And as part of my personal integrity, being honest is critical to me. And, there will be times when I might go, I'm just having a rubbish day today. And sometimes somebody saying that to you and recognizing it's not all great and life isn't all wonderful at times, it's important to get that balance. And I do believe that is right. Clearly, you don't want the other end of the extreme where they're a mood hoover and they suck all the energy out of the room because it's always negative. But I think having that ability to recognize if you're not okay and to be open with people who are not okay isn't a weakness, it's actually a strength, I would argue, and is really important. But yeah, toxic positivity it's quite a new concept, I think, but it is gaining more momentum of, you don't always have to being in an environment, if everybody is dead positive and you're not in that place, can be really draining for somebody. Carolyn's just put a really important comment on, you don't always need to fix stuff. It's enough to feel seen and heard sometimes. So it isn't always about problem solving, but really good point. Why, thanks. Any other comments or questions before I move on to the next bit? Melanie?
Hello, thanks for the presentation. You mentioned about a Northwest network for health and wellbeing champions.
Yeah.
Have you got any more information on that?
Yeah, I'm about to do a slide on it. If so, you've led me into it perfectly, Melanie. Thank you. So yeah, I sort of started the presentation thinking I wanted to focus on you guys initially and focus on making sure that you're looking after yourselves, because that's really important. Sorry, I'm really struggling today with tech, so just bear with me. It's determined to put my slideshow around the wrong way. Either that or my brain isn't working, which is equally as possible. Yeah, so we started a Northwest Health and Wellbeing Champions group probably a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, it didn't gain momentum at that time, but I'm aiming to restart that group. The aims of the group would be one, to provide a support network for health and wellbeing champions, because sometimes you may only have one or two of those people in an individual organisation, and you know it can be challenging to come up with ideas of what to do, or if you're hitting barriers, how to address them. So the aim was to have that support network so that people could reach out, talk to other health and wellbeing champions, get support and share best practice as well. So again, the aim would be if an organisation is doing something different or innovative, that gets brought into that group, is shared, so that the health and wellbeing champions can pick that up, can utilise that, and take it back into their organisation. I'm a great believer in R&R, as they call it, rip off and replicate. You know, we shouldn't keep reinventing the wheel. If there's good practice out there in other organisations, we should adopt that. But also my aim for the Health and Wellbeing Champion Group is to strengthen health and wellbeing and to support all our staff through what is a challenging time. You know, I think we're seeing financial constraints like we haven't seen in a long time. That has implications onto finance teams. And therefore, anything that we can do to strengthen health and wellbeing across the whole of the Northwest for all finance staff, I think is really important and critical. I'll be looking at setting up the first of these meetings in the next couple of months. Please encourage your local health and wellbeing champions to keep a lookout for it. Encourage them to attend. I know everybody has really busy diaries. There'll be no more than an hour, and we'll decide the frequency of that meetings, but it won't be more than an hour a month. And encourage them to get involved as well. So by that, I mean, bring forward what they're doing in their organisation. Because sometimes I think you can sit in an organisation and you can think, you know, I'm not going to tell people we're doing that because it's not that interesting or whatever it may be. But the reality is, you might be doing something that nobody else has thought about. You may think it's run-of-the-mill standard for you, but no, other people may not be doing that in their organisations. And if you can share that learning, that's brilliant. So that's regarding the Health and Wellbeing Champions support network that we're hoping to get up and running. I'm asking for your support as value makers to get those messages back into your organisations. As value makers as well, if you would like to be involved, you are more than welcome to come along and join too. Just drop me an email and I will invite you to the group too. But happy to take any questions. I can see Rebecca's got a hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. I think it's a really good idea to have that group. So we have a wellbeing champion that's not part of Value Makers or One NHS, and I'm just thinking, how will you share it, just in case there's people like that maybe necessarily someone from that organisation has not come to this meeting and won't necessarily know to share it, will it be shared through? How will you share the information?
If they're registered as a health and wellbeing champion with One NHS Finance, One NHS Finance have given me a list of all the people in the Northwest. So I will email out and invite them all. However, if there are people who maybe aren't registered but still would like to get involved, I'm more than happy to widen that group. But that will be the starting point, is I'll use the One NHS Finance list that I've got.
Okay, thank you. I'll get us to sign up to that, because I didn't know that you could sign up to one. So yeah, I'll get.
Well, if you just give me her details as well, Rebecca,
I'll pass
because I've got a
list.
Well. Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
And I've seen a few people have said they'd like to get involved, so I'll take your details as well away with me, and I will include you guys too, because the more the merrier. Any other questions? Anything else anyone would like to pick up? That's brilliant. Thank you for sharing the champions application form. That's really helpful. It's dead easy if you want to sign up to be a champion as well. And it just means you get some of the comms that comes out centrally, etc., that may give you ideas you can do too. So it's worth signing up. Okay, well, that's me then. Thank you very much for inviting me. If anybody would like to reach out, have any more conversations, share anything with me, please, I'm on email, just drop me a message. More than happy to do that.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're just going to I'm just going to put you guys into breakout rooms, and we're just going to kind of speak about what you guys are doing in your own organisations in regards of health and wellbeing, any groups you guys have set up, and just share it with others, and they can maybe take it back to their own organisations as well. So we're just going to do that for about 15 to 20 minutes, and I'll pull you guys back into this room. So I'm just going to open the rooms now, and you should automatically be pulled into them. Loading up. Okay, just opening the rooms.
And just sort of around what you discussed. So do we have any volunteers to go first for feedback? Rebecca?
Yeah, I don't mind feedback for our group. So all of the trusts, we were all from different trusts, and everyone was sort of had a good access to lots of health and wellbeing, and it's really good, obviously, if you've got a good health and wellbeing finance champion to sort of share that. We talked, there was a lot of different things that happen between trusts as well, though. Some people have the flexi working policies, some of them don't. We have birthday leave and the others don't. But there was a good I'm not sure the trust that Svetlana was at, but she was saying that they have like a flexi policy in finance where 2 hours, I think it was 4 hours a year split into 2 hours. You could have sort of social time for your, like, to see family and friends, so you can take those 2 hours as like protected time for health and well-being. It was called like well-being time, which was something that sounded good from the trust. Don't know if anyone else from my group has anything else that they wanted to share as well.
We were also talking about, Rebecca, weren't we, and Angela and Svetlana, that one of the things that that we've struggled with, and it was looking for ideas, is actually getting people to jump on board with taking time for health and well-being, because at the moment I think we'd all agree that things have never been as hard as what they are within NHS finance. So actually getting people to commit and to take advantage of the time that's being offered for health and well-being, knowing that you're coming back to a constantly stressful environment, is quite difficult at the moment. So it was looking for ideas around that, because it's great putting all these different health and well-being practices in place, and it's important that we do look after our health and well-being and our mental health when you're coming back to a situation of, well, yeah, but we still need this doing and this doing in this time constraint and all these pressures. So it was more about getting, other people's opinion on how do you get people to take advantage of what's available to them to help them with the health and well-being in this current environment.
Thanks, Beth. I think that's a really important point as well. So on a related note, the Skills Development Network have had some feedback recently, or they've given some feedback a lot. They've had to postpone a number of courses, specifically around health and well-being and the less technical and softer courses that they provide, because they haven't had enough candidates on there to actually run the courses. So that they've noticed a drop in these courses being run that were previously very popular and usually full, and now they're struggling to fill them to a minimal level, whereas before they were maxed out on candidates signing up. So that's probably a very real takeout that we can see across the region, that people are either struggling to find time for it or struggling to prioritize this above other workload and other pressures. So I think that's a very real concern from a health and well-being perspective, how we encourage and make sure there is that real protected time, and it's not just notional that we talk about it and people don't actually take it or don't feel that they can use it, but it's theoretical protected time. Make sure it's real protected time. Thank you. Anyone from another room? Dawn?
Thank you. So yeah, we were, again, there was 4 of us in the room, all from different trusts, and I did a lot of talking. The other 3 will confirm. So within our trust, within the department, we have a number of special interest groups, one of them being the Health and Wellbeing SIG. And they do a fantastic job. So we just sort of focused on a couple of the things that they do. So we have activity teams. So at the beginning of every year, everybody in the department is allocating an activity team from the apprentices right up to the DOF. And as part of that activity team, we have monthly or bi-monthly activities where we have protected time. Something as simple as a quiz looking at landmarks around the world. Can you name them? Can you say what city they're in? But it's 15-20 minutes where you're integrating with people that you don't necessarily encounter on a day-to-day basis. So, within there, you've got the systems team, you've got accounts payable, you've got financial management, and it's just 15-20 minutes just to sort of have a laugh and realise, as we did the last one, that we know very few monuments around the world. But it's just that protected time to get everybody together, that what we would have done in the office pre-COVID, and these special interest groups did start up pre-COVID, and so we were all sat in a room together. But now, as I say, it's just that protected time to down tools and be you, and just have a laugh with people that you might not have encountered in the office for the last 6 months. But on the flip side of that, they also roll out a fortnightly Slido poll, which again, it's a safe space. If you want to be anonymous, you can be anonymous. And that asks you, the first question on there, it's just 3 really simple questions. But question 1 is, how are you feeling? And it's everything from I'm feeling absolutely brilliant to no, actually I'm in a really, really dark place and I could do with some assistance. And it also gives you the option to say, if you're anything less than okay, is it because of work? Are we putting too much on you? And can we help? Question 2 then goes on to say, is there anything preventing you from work? And that can be anything from the systems are absolutely shocking this week, I'm spending my time looking at the spinning circle, to and you'll see comments on there, people say, yeah, I've too much going on at home, and it is, it's affecting what I'm managing to do. And question 3 is, can we help? And it's free text. People, because it's anonymous, can be very, very honest. There's too many deadlines, there's too many conflicting deadlines, there's too many duplicate requests. And again, it's just that safe space. As I say, they can be anonymous if they want to be. but they can air whatever they want to air, and they know it's coming every 2 weeks, so you know that it can be, this is really getting on my wick and I need to say it, and actually that's their space to say it. And I think, you know, the focus behind both of those items, amongst a lot of other things that they do, is just remembering that, you know, behind the deadlines, behind the requests, that we're people, and if we're not the best people we can be, then, you know, that is a knock-on effect, and it's a knock-on effect on the team if you can't, you know, carry out your role. So yeah, it's just a really, really good way of getting everybody together and giving everybody that safe space.
Thank you. That's interesting. There's some really good ideas there, particularly around the more social aspect of those just 20 minutes regular captions. I think that's a really good idea that can be quite easily taken away and replicated. So thank you for that, Dawn. Sharon, are you volunteering for the next room to speak for us? Hand up.
Yeah, I will do. So we had there was 4 people in our group from my trust, from the Christie, and then 3 other people. So we just shared quite a few good ideas. I shared, we do a Wellbeing Wednesday every 3 weeks. We do that. I've got Sarah on the call. She leads on that and produces a really good newsletter which shares lots of tips, and will focus if you know, if there's like a theme. So we've got stress awareness coming up soon in the next couple of weeks. Somebody else in our group had Feel Good Friday, which I thought was a really good suggestion, because you're finishing the week, aren't you, on a real positive there with that Feel Good Friday, and again just sharing some tips. Mention that we're doing like a health and wellbeing day, but we're conscious of people's time, so you know, people don't necessarily have the time to spend a whole day doing it, so we've got like time slots throughout the day which people can dip into as they're free to attend the different sessions. So just quite a lot of ideas we shared, which was good. And the people in my group, it was a mixture. Some of them do quite a bit, some of them don't do so much, so they're going to take that back to their trust as well and share with the teams. And I think just having this conversation is good. It's getting people talking about it, isn't it?
Thanks, Sharon. Yeah, and like you say, having the conversation and sharing ideas is good. And you know, there's no bad ideas in terms of this. It is really good to just share and talk openly about it. It's really helpful. Thank you. Is there anyone else from any of the other rooms that would like to speak? It's 40 people on the call, Aoife. I'm guessing that means there was about 10 rooms. So, Debbie, put your hand up. Are you volunteering for us to speak for your room?
Yeah, I'll do our room. Yeah, also 4 people, 4 different organisations, which was good. We had someone from Langston South Cumbria in ours, so we heard a lot about the activity groups, and I've got lots of ideas from those. The one thing I don't think we talked about was the duration, so knowing that they're only 15-20 minutes for some of those is possibly actually really doable. It's not long, is it? You can make a cup of tea in that time or whatever. And it's funny how if we were all in the office back in those pre-COVID days, we'd think nothing about chatting to somebody for 15-20 minutes. But I think now we're always a bit more panicky when we're away from our computer or our teams for that long. So I think that's really positive. We talked about some of the things that they're doing at East Cheshire, about step challenges and things like that, coffee mornings, afternoon teas where work talk is banned. And then I was talking about what we're doing at WWL. There's a trust-wide step into Christmas, so we're talking about getting involved in that as a finance team and potentially doing some kind of challenge through November to see who can do the most, etc., to get people out. Because I think one of the things we were talking about before is just going on a walk on your lunch break. People forget to do because you get a bit absorbed, especially if you're at home. And then we were also talking about team briefs and making time for some of the softer stuff as well. I think that's probably about it, unless either of the Melanies or Linda want to add anything.
Thanks, Debbie. So anyone from the other rooms want to volunteer for any feedback? Is that hands back up. Debbie, if you've got something to add.
Sorry, I was just going to say, interesting what you just mentioned about some of the health and wellbeing courses through the FSD, because we had a bit of talk last week on our team brief about how a number of staff have tried to book onto the retirement one and it's full. So ironic that we've got lots of staff looking at that pathway, but not so much for some of the other things. I know I put something in about the sumo guy and whether we could do that again, but recognise the pressure. But I think I'd really tried to plug some of the courses at our team brief last week, and I don't know whether others, we need to think about whether we do the same elsewhere, because courses that are on Teams and they're a lot shorter than they were pre-COVID, aren't they? I think it makes it so much more accessible for people to go without having to take as long as you would, but yet we still look at them and still think we can't make that time, even if it's an hour or 2 hours. So something to think about there, maybe through the FSD lead group and things about how we market some of those, but just a reflection. I'll shut up now.
Yeah, no, completely agree with that. And sort of on a similar note, if there's anything that we could do differently with those courses, if there's any feedback that we want to give to the Skills Development Network around, we think you could run the courses in a different way to make them more accessible. Obviously, there are financial issues with some of that around they don't have the cash available that they used to, so that there are credits being asked for. But again, with most organisations, credits are generally readily available. But again, if that is a barrier, having that feedback would be helpful to phrase the conversation in that way, that it's a credit issue and it's a financial issue rather than a time or a personal issue. So any feedback as to why people aren't doing it or how it could be done differently would be helpful.
It's definitely
Adam,
not a credit issue for us.
Yeah,
like
I
you've
think we're
said.
similar.
Yeah.
Adam, are you commenting on the room? But are you? And just before that, if so, Rebecca, are you commenting on what we've just discussed about?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on what we discussed about.
Yeah.
But
So if I just bring you in first, and then we'll go on to Adam's room, if that's okay.
Yeah, I was just thinking, obviously, we get a lot of ideas from sharing ideas here. And I think with those kind of courses, it'd be good to kind of hear feedback, from someone. They do run them a couple of times, don't they, similar sessions. So, having that feedback from someone else to say what the course was about, what they did. Because I think sometimes when you just read it on an email about this is what the course is going to be, you don't necessarily know, what the content was like and whether it's going to be relevant to you. So that could be a good idea, having someone to say, to champion the course. Basically, I've been on this course and this is what it was about. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you. Adam, I'll bring you in for your room.
So I was just going to echo just a lot of the things that have been said. I do think it's great that we've got this space to just discuss a lot of ideas, because within Pennine there aren't many things that we actively do to encourage health and well-being and mental just thinking about mental health generally. We had a lot of good feedback from Rebecca from the Christie, and there was a lot of things that she was discussing about stuff that they do in terms of actual activities going out, but also thinking about what they do on a daily basis. So one thing that really was interesting was how they think about information, like distributing information. Some people have a lot of information overload and they're getting emails and they're getting Teams messages, thinking about how we can refine the communication channels and making sure that if we're putting information out there, it's going to the relevant people. And also with health and well-being, they've got their own Teams channel set up. So anything that relates to that will go into the Teams channel. So people aren't bombarded with all these emails. They'll just dip into the channel if they're interested. But yeah, I don't know if Rebecca's got anything she wants to add, because she had quite a few good things that they were doing at the Christie.
Yeah, I think Sharon's covered some of the bits that we spoke about as well. But I know we do kind of on-site team days as well, where we have an hour dedicated to kind of health and well-being. We get different people to lead the sessions so that we're kind of doing different things that might interest different people. Yeah.
Thanks. That's really obviously just coming from the Christie. I know we've had a lot of discussion there around the weekly emails and what we send out, and is there too much information in them? But if we don't send it that way, people still need to be aware of everything that's going on. So is it better to have one one email or one newsletter or one channel with everything on that's just sent once a week, or should that be scattered out? Is it more accessible? So I know we've had lots of conversations about the best way to deliver that. Just reflecting, having moved to Bolton, we actually have some information screens in the offices, so in the shared offices, that we have these slide decks with a lot of this information coming up on, and we've now added that to our SharePoint, so that when people access SharePoint, similar to your intranet, that those finance or finance and procurement specific updates will appear on there and roll through the presentation that way as well. So slightly different way of presenting very similar information as to what the Christie are doing in their weekly newsletters. And obviously, I think a lot of places have slightly different approaches to that, which is very helpful to see different ways and what works well and what doesn't. And I think there's a lot of trial and error, and there's probably not one size fits all, and not one size fits for forever. I think it's probably a changing beast, that what works now might not work this time next year, and it needs to be flexible around that. Are there any other feedback from any of the other rooms? I think we probably got through about half of them now. We are ahead of schedule, so we do have a lot of time for some more feedback if there's anything we haven't covered. Not seeing any more hands up, so I'll assume the other rooms discussed very similar things. Yeah, okay, so as I said, we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so we'll just move on to the next item, which is regional update. So I've just got a couple of slides just to talk a little bit about what we're doing as a Value Maker group within GM at the moment. Sorry, let me just stop presenting. So hopefully everyone can see those slides now. Okay. So in terms of a network update from GM, we've got our next GM meeting planned for the 16th of December. The idea is that it's going to be a one NHS finance meeting as opposed to a Value Maker meeting. So this will be split into two parts. The first part will be a Value Maker update. So very similar to the session we've had today, there'll be some element of best practice or information sharing, followed by breakout rooms with the opportunity to network and the feedback session from that, so that we can share that with the group. The second part is going to be a special interest group meeting focus. So we're going to be hosting 4 subgroups within that meeting. So one for EDI, Equality and Diversity Ambassadors, a FACE around education and skills development, health and well-being, and then one for software and innovation champions to come and share. So the idea will be is that you'll be able to go into one of those rooms, have a mini network meeting around those particular special interest area, and then join back the wider group and have a discussion and hear feedback from that. The reasons that we're doing this is partly to try and get more people interested. If you're not a member of those networks, you can still join and go along and see what each one is like. It shares it with the wider group so that we're giving that feedback beyond that specific network. And we found that a lot of people are members of multiple networks. So trying to run a separate, so for me as the EDI lead for the Equality and Diversity Ambassadors and GM, and the Value Maker lead, it's doubling up on those meetings and it becomes very time consuming. So we're trying to help reduce the time commitment to just do it within an hour and a half or a 2-hour meeting, rather than have 2 or 3 of those meetings or one meeting every month when you get through the different networks. So we're trying to consolidate that to help people's time. We are just trialing this at the moment. It might not work, so we might change our approach and go to have separate network meetings later on, but it's something that we're keen to try, and hopefully this format works for the group. We have a One NHS Finance Leads group that meets monthly. So obviously that group's responsible for planning and setting up the agendas and organising these meetings. We have quite a lot of value makers and EDI leads on that group. We're probably short from the other networks a little bit more. So if anyone from the GM network would like to join that leads group, please message me, particularly if you're from one of those other areas. That's not to say value makers or EDI ambassadors wouldn't be welcome on that group. They certainly would. But if you or anyone in your organisation would be interested in joining the leads group, then let me know and we'll get you sent out to those monthly meetings. The meeting's going to be advertised through the Skills Development Network. I've literally just had an email to say that there's been a delay, but it's currently being set up, so it should be live by the end of the week for people to book on. I'll ask Aoife to help circulate that across the GM networks as well. Obviously, if anyone from the other networks wants to come along, we're not going to be policing it, so anyone can join, but our focus is on GM and trying to publicise it within the GM network. But if anyone's looking for ideas or has something that they'd like to share at this, people are more than welcome to come along and join and see what we're doing in GM. So that's how our structure of meetings are going to work going forward. Hopefully by the next meeting, we'll be able to give you some feedback on how that's worked. So I know everyone on this call is a value maker, or hopefully is, and if not, is going to sign up after this call. But I just wanted to plug the Value Maker Conference, which is scheduled for the 7th of November. So from what I recall, and Aoife is going to tell me differently, I think there's just over 150 people booked on face-to-face, and there's just about 100 face-to-face places left. So please take advantage of that. It is a free conference, so it is just the travel that you'd need to get there. And there's also an unlimited number of virtual spaces available. So if you can't attend face-to-face, please consider attending for at least part of the day virtually. And we'll share these slides out, but please publicise that across your departments and try and get people involved and engaged, as much for potential value makers as people who are already members of this network and people in any of the other One NHS Finance networks. It's always a really good day, these conferences, so I would encourage anyone to join if you've not already signed up to that. And then lastly, just a request from me. So I'm actually presenting at the Value Maker Conference and talking about the Northwest Network and my journey as a value maker, as I was part of the first cohort 10 years ago. And actually one of the questions that was asked of that very first cohort was, what does future focused finance mean to you? So I'd be really grateful if we can get some feedback from the network now as to actually what One NHS Finance means to you. So we do have a little bit of time, so we're going to drop the link in the chat if people can go on after this call before, as we're finishing a bit early, and just complete that would be really helpful. So I'm looking for 3 words or phrases about what One NHS Finance means to you, and any examples of best practice you might have. If you've got more than 3 words or phrases, if you think of something later on, feel free to come back and add more. There's no limit, but that would be really helpful if we can get people to give a couple of words and a couple of ideas of, not recently, not necessarily what you might have done, but over the last 10 years, what's come out of the Northwest that you found really helpful, or specific topics or interests that benefits you've got out of the Value Maker Network over the last 10 years, what areas of best practice that you think is worth sharing on that national stage and really spotlighting what the Northwest does really well from a value maker perspective. So I'm interested to get that wider feedback from the group. So if we put that in the chat, and hopefully I'll be flooded with responses by 11:30, and I'll have everything I need to finish my presentation off for the Value Maker Conference. So really big plea from me for you to do that and to share it across your organisation as well. I will be monitoring, but hopefully by this time next week, we'll have enough responses to have a really good and broad perception of what One NHS Finance means to the Northwest Network. so that is my whistle stop tour for network updates. And I think that brings us on to AOB. So is there anything anyone would like to raise, any particular work streams or courses that they think they want spotlight, that they think people should know about, or anything coming up, or anything they'd like help on that they'd like to just take these last few minutes to escalate and talk about? Rebecca?
It'd just be really good to get feedback from everybody out of people. So in our organisation, we're trying to restructure our FSD team, and we're having a little bit of, like we talked about earlier, what Beth said, struggling to get people to kind of do things that are voluntary. So if anything's like things that they need to volunteer for, we're not really getting much uptake. So is there anywhere where they're not really having that issue, or they've got really good ideas of how to overcome it, and how to market things differently in the trust? That would be really useful.
So obviously I've just joined Bolton, and they have an engagement group, which I'm still getting a feel for how that works and what's structured on that, but that engagement group does seem to be quite active. I know, Sharon, at the Christie, you effectively invite everyone to your skills development meetings, and there's actually quite good buy-in, or I felt there was certainly better buy-in there than what I'd seen previously from a broad range of staff. Sharon, I know I put you on the spot there, but I'll let people in.
It's okay. I was going to put my hand up in any case. Yeah, we invited everybody to the accreditation meetings, because we're just going through our accreditation process to try and get people involved in that. I know me and Gavin have had discussions previously. I think some of it's about the mindset into it, and getting it to be understood that this is part of your job. It's not an extra to your job. It is part of your role, because I think a lot of the time you see what your business as usual work is, so whether it's posting invoices, whether it's doing month end, or, your day-to-day role, you see that as your main job, whereas actually this is part of your job, and this is some, it's really important stuff that we deal with, and it's part of us working together as a team. So it's how you get that mindset across to people, which we are probably still working on that, even though we have progressed quite a lot at the Christie.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really good idea, sending it out to everyone, because we're due to do our accreditation too, and maybe just having it as like a separate, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily know what, when you're saving down evidence, they might not necessarily know, if they're not part of the team, what they're looking for. So thank you.
I think maybe using people on this group as well to share their recent accreditation. So obviously we're going through it at Bolton at the moment. So just finished one at the Christie, then moved straight over to one at Bolton from the SINS. But yeah, we've done a lunchtime learning session on what accreditation means and the network. So, that's raising the awareness that way is good. And I'm sure if people have gone through an accreditation recently, that they'd be willing to come along and share their experiences with your team. And if we could support each other in that, then I think it helps if it's not an internal person saying it, because I think if you're the one promoting it all the time, you kind of get lost in everything else that you're promoting. So if you've got someone external come in and talk about it, sometimes it gets a little bit more attention, or it's a different voice saying what you've already been saying, but people tend to listen a little bit more because it's not you saying it. I know that's a terrible mindset, but that's certainly what I felt sometimes, that getting someone else to come in and say the same things gets better attention than me saying it myself. So I'm certainly happy to go and talk to anyone around accreditation and 1HS Finance, and if anyone's got anything that they're doing particularly well, would certainly welcome them to come to Bolton, or sort of anywhere that I can support in showcasing that a little bit more. And ultimately, it's good evidence for your accreditation that you're going and sharing, and you're supporting others. So it acts as good evidence for your own accreditation going forward as well, which is always a plus and an easy sign off for it as well. Anything else? So sorry. Anything else that anyone would like to raise? Okay, so I will give everyone 5 minutes back, and please come and fill out the Teams form. And it would really help me out. So I just implore everyone again to fill that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gavin.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Gavin. Thanks,
See you
everyone.
later.
Too.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.